Ce qui est extrêmement malheureux et déplorable, je dirais même inacceptable, parce que c'est pas sûr que toutes ces femmes qui donnent naissance.
Tonight, the province of Quebec is one of the last in Canada where Indigenous children are being earmarked for apprehension even before they are born.
Right now, through formal resolution, the QA board is opposing Phase 2.
First they were in, now they're not. Support for the Baffinland mine caves in as Inuit organizations pulls its support.
My next step in this van here, I'm going to cut a 12-foot hole in the side of it, have two 6-foot doors that'll come open, and I'll have a live band in there.
And taking COVID relief on the road, this van is making its rounds using music to pull people out of the COVID-19 doldrums. We've done many stories here at APTN News about birth alerts. They're now prohibited in 6 Canadian provinces, but not in Quebec, not by a long shot. A recent investigation by APTN shows that one region of the province with a large Indigenous population has a birth alert on average every second day. Lindsay Richardson reads this story by Sylvie Ambrose.
Il y en a qui ont très peur, même aujourd'hui, au moment où on se parle, d'aller à l'hôpital puis donner naissance à l'hôpital.
Lucien Wabanonek works for Minu Obigawazin, an organization that works with youth protection services in 4 Anishinaabe First Nations, including his home community of Lac-Simon, about 5.5 hours northwest of Montreal. Wabanonek has a lot to say on the practice of social services targeting mothers and taking their children soon after they've given birth, also known as a birth alert.
Moi, je crois qu'il y a encore beaucoup de signalements à la naissance, ce qui est extrêmement malheureux et déplorable, je dirais même inacceptable, parce que c'est pas sûr que toutes ces femmes qui donnent naissance, ils ont des situations difficiles ou sociales. Donc, moi, je crois qu'il y a encore un profilage racial dans ces différents hôpitaux-là ici en Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
The National MMIWG inquiry made abolishing birth alerts one of their calls to justice, calling the practice racist and discriminatory.
Le Québec, je pense que doit arrêter de se mettre la tête dans le sable puis reconnaître qu'il y a vraiment un racisme systémique dans leurs institutions.
British Columbia, Ontario, and Manitoba officially prohibited birth alerts months ago. Saskatchewan and Prince Edward Island became the last provinces to ban the practice in early February.
Il y a encore des signalements à la naissance à l'hôpital de Val-d'Or, mais aux alentours probablement aussi où nos Premières Nations habitent en ville, dépendamment des endroits où ils habitent.
An access to information request by APTN shows Wabanonek is correct. From April 1st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020, the 5 hospitals in the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region registered 198 birth alerts. The most common reason for an alert is serious risk of negligence, which appears 74 times, or 37% of the total. 80 reports, or 40%, were from the Val-d'Or Hospital. Of those reports, nearly half were for serious risk of negligence. The Val-d'Or Hospital also has a reputation. It was the subject of several testimonies from the VA Commission, the Quebec inquiry into relations between Indigenous peoples and the province's public services. The Regional Health Authority cannot tell us how many alerts were for Indigenous mothers. Wabanonek says it's a lot, and that there are better ways to help new mothers whose children may be at risk.
Dépendamment des régions, des communautés, des besoins des communautés, ces éléments-là doivent être rapidement, vraiment très rapidement mis en place pour qu'on puisse répondre aux besoins aux femmes qui donnent naissance dans les hôpitaux. Puis on a besoin de les supporter, c'est important.
APTN requested an interview with the Quebec Minister of Health and Social Services, Lionette Carman. The minister was not available, but provided a statement. He defends the birth alert system by citing a study of teenagers who want to maintain this service. He adds that, quote, "The decision to use an unborn baby alert is a clinical decision based on risk factors and not on the cultural identity of families, and that the practice does not necessarily lead to a removal of the child at birth, but rather to a report that will be processed and assessed against the Youth Protection Law, which, where appropriate, leads to the appropriate support for families." Webananik says birth alerts have a hidden cost to his community.
Moi, je sais bien, pour l'avoir eu connaissance puis l'avoir vu certaines choses dans ma communauté ici au Lac-Simon, il y a des jeunes femmes qui se sont enlevées la vie.
Meanwhile, the Health Ministry acknowledges there are issues. They are waiting for the final report of the Commission on the Rights of Children to be released on April 30th. A story by Sylvie Ambroise, APTN National News, Montreal.
To the north now, where the Baffinland iron ore mine in North Baffin Island has been a lightning bolt of controversy so far this year. Protesters took over the mine's access to the outside world for a week. And now the Inuit Association, most closely aligned with the mine, has taken a giant step away from it. More on that story, here's Kent Driscoll.
After a decade of wholehearted support, the Kikitani Inuit Association no longer supports the expansion of the Baffinland mine in Mary River. Under the Nunavut land claim, the Regional Inuit Association are basically Baffinland's landlord. According to their president, this isn't a neutral stance. This is opposition.
Right now, through formal resolution, the QIA board is opposing Phase 2. So,
in February, a group calling themselves the Nulujat Land Guardians held the mine for a week, preventing access to the runway or access road. That was a major shift in tone. As late as 2018, local groups in the communities closest to the mine were on board. According to the QIA president, things were different then.
But it wasn't just a QIA push in terms of the support. So the important piece there is that it was a collective in terms of different members, especially from folks from Pond Inlet who are the most impacted.
After the protests and a contentious week of hearings, QIA had their own board meeting and voted to no longer support the mine expansion.
And the vote was unanimous in terms of who voted. It was unanimous with the exception of one who had to declare abstain from voting because they're in conflict. So,
the mine is responsible for 24% of Nunavut's gross domestic product and has 288 Inuit employees. The mine has maintained since the beginning that an expansion is the only way to ensure a profit. QIA thinks the risk is worth the reward.
But that's a risk we all have to take on such an important future decision of this scale.
The Nunavut Impact Review Board meets again in April to discuss the expansion and will then send a recommendation to the federal government. That's all it is, a recommendation. The eventual decision on whether the mine will expand will not be made by Inuit or Nunavummiut. It will be made by Ottawa. What happens after that is anybody's guess. Kent Driscoll, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
And you can find much more on Kent's story on our website, aptnnews.ca. Time now for a quick break. Still to come, another cancellation for Indigenous athletes.
Got me to be working harder and practicing more and looking forward for the future competitions I could compete in.
Welcome back to the pandemic now, and with COVID-19 variants of concern spreading across the country, it's now become a race to vaccinate Canadians before being overtaken by a third wave. In Ottawa, government officials gave an update on the COVID-19 vaccine rollout. Canada says 3.4 million vaccines have been administered to date, with 42% of people over 80 years old and older vaccinated so far. Although they say there's no delivery scheduled for the newly acquired Johnson & Johnson vaccine, all other vaccine deliveries are on track.
The important collaboration between federal, provincial, territorial, and Indigenous partners continues so that they can be, we can support them by providing them with the necessary ancillary equipment, the freezers, and other equipment to enhance their cold chain capacity as required.
Well, like many people, it's been a tough year for Northern Indigenous athletes. Around this time last March, it was announced the 2020 Arctic Winter Games in Whitehorse were cancelled due to the pandemic. Now the 2022 Games in Wood Buffalo, Alberta are postponed until further notice. APTN's Sarah Connors caught up with some athletes to see how they've been coping with the disappointing news.
Emma Tom is a Selkirk First Nation athlete.
Archery is mostly mental, and it's always you and the bow and your goals.
This time last year, the 19-year-old was training for her first Arctic Winter Games. The 2020 Games in Whitehorse would have been the first year archery was included. Then,
it is out of an abundance of caution today that I have recommended the cancellation of the 2020 Arctic Winter Games.
To hear that maybe my first Arctic Winter Games that I would have ever gone to was like canceled, and it was a big bummer for me, and I was upset.
She wanted to keep sharp, but COVID kept her off the range.
29. There's a few months where I just had no space to practice and had to stop shooting for a bit.
With an opportunity like this, you just gotta enjoy all of it.
Last year, we caught up with Kudawat Shorty Henyu as he was training to compete in all 10 male open sports. A year later, the 23-year-old says the cancellation was a big blow for young Northern athletes, as larger-scale events like the Arctic Winter Games don't happen often.
These sports things are stepping stones for not only just First Nations athletes and whatnot, it's like every athlete out there. Right now, I guess it's for the best, but then again, it's more restless athletes, I guess.
He says the cancellation was also personally disheartening.
I was really training for my last year, actually. I was putting a lot of work because I wanted this one to be like my send-off.
Adding to the disappointment, next year's Arctic Winter Games in Wood Buffalo, Alberta have been postponed until further notice.
Initially, I was just disappointed and gutted for the kids.
Arctic sports instructor Eric Porter says it's disappointing because the games are more than just sports for Northern Indigenous athletes.
The Dene Games and the Arctic sports, those are the two main things that they get to actually represent their cultural side as well. It's not mainstream, right? So these are only happen at these sort of games or competitions in Alaska, which we still don't have access to as well.
However, he says athletes are hopeful for the future.
They've honestly been pretty optimistic and positive. They're just like, okay, next games, let's look forward.
As for Tom, she's still aiming for her next shot at the competition, whenever that may be.
Got me to be working harder and practicing more, and looking forward for the future competitions I could compete in.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Sad news indeed. Maybe there's still a chance for the 2022 Games. In other news, an Alberta man has been sentenced to 4 years in prison for his role in the death of a hockey player from Siksika Nation. Cody Giffen was convicted of manslaughter in the death of 24-year-old Christian Youngman. He was sentenced this week. A young man was found dead in his vehicle east of Calgary in 2019. According to an agreed statement of facts read in court, Cody and his brother Brandon Giffen had chased a young man down a rural highway after a young man sold a pack of cigarettes to Cody. He became enraged because a couple of cigarettes were missing from the pack. Brandon shot at a young man with a hunting rifle while Cody drove the vehicle. Brandon Giffen goes on trial on a charge of first-degree murder in June. We've got to step aside for one more quick break. Still to come, using music to uplift the soul.
To me, I'm promoting my culture and heritage portfolio, and it brings happiness and joy to the people. And
back. Time now for our photo of the day. Brad Crowfoot sent us this photo of a mural on a building from downtown Eastside Hastings in Vancouver, British Columbia. An important message for sure. And a thanks to all our viewers who have sent in pictures. And if you haven't yet, or if you have and you have a different one, send us a picture to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Time now to take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the east coast, +7 with showers for St. John's, -6 and snow in Halifax, 13 below with snow for Nain, -12 and snow in Inukjuak, 0 under sunny skies for Montreal and Quebec City, -1 in Chibougamau, +8 and sunny for Sault Ste. Marie, 4 above in North Bay. +11 in Thunder Bay under sunny skies, 1 degree cooler in Sioux Lookout. 10 above in God's Lake, +5 for Norway House. 13 and sunny for Winnipeg and Gimli, 12 in Dauphin. 15 for Regina, +16 and sunny for Swift Current. 9 in Meadow Lake, 12 for Buffalo Narrows and La Ronge. In northern Alberta, +12 for Fort McMurray, 8 in Grand Prairie. 16 in Medicine Hat, 13 for Edmonton. Showers and 12 for Vancouver, 11 with rain for Victoria. 9 and showers in Prince George, +2 with a chance of snow in Fort Nelson. -19 in Old Crow, snow and 8 below for Whitehorse. -3 in Yellowknife, 16 below with snow in Wrigley and Norman Wells. -26 for Sax Harbor, 22 below in Pawlatuck. -13 in Chesterfield, -27 for Cambridge Bay. 33 below in Resolute, -18 in Kingate. The Manitoba Métis Federation is doing what they can to keep people's spirits up as the pandemic rolls on. A Métis music van is going around Winnipeg and lifting morale through music. Daryl Stranger has more.
The sounds of fiddle music are coming from this van, and its driver, Manitoba Métis Federation Vice President Alfred Buck Anderson, wants everyone to hear it. The van started out as a pilot project to expose Métis culture to people as in-person events were cancelled due to the pandemic. Now, Anderson is getting calls to go to schools, birthdays, and to cheer people up.
To me, I'm promoting my culture and heritage portfolio, and it brings happiness and joys to the people, and that shows up on the comments on Facebook and the smiles on their faces and the clapping and the dancing. That's what keeps me going.
The van caught the attention of the Selkirk Biz, which supports local businesses in the city. Anderson and the Selkirk Red River Métis Local, where he is based out of, were given the Business Excellence Award, which recognizes resiliency and determination throughout 2020. This year, the eligibility criteria was changed to allow more businesses to apply.
We felt that we wanted to do some special recognition, speaking to the struggles and the challenges and the positive stories that actually came out of 2020. We had criteria around uplifting support, staff care and accommodation, resiliency, and just the way that people had to adapt.
Anderson said he hopes to upgrade the van to allow a built-in stage for musicians to play live music out of.
Well, my next step in this van here, I'm going to cut a 12-foot hole in the side of it, have 2 6-foot doors that'll come open, and I'll have a live band in there. So I can go stop in a corner and we can do a 10-15 minute show, close the door, go to the next corner, do another one. So that's bringing live music to the people also.
So if you hear loud fiddle music, you'll know to look for the signature blue and white flag of the Métis Nation and the Métis Music Van. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Well, that'll get your toes tapping. Great job, Buck. I'm sure Todd's toes are tapping in Ottawa. On Nation to Nation tonight, they're taking a look at the housing crisis in First Nations and Inuit communities. Here's Todd with more.
First up on tonight's broadcast will be NDP MP Mumilaaq Qaqqaq. She's about to release a housing report on what she saw when she toured 5 Inuit communities almost 2 years ago. Even though she knew what to expect, the conditions and stories she heard left her taking a leave of absence from Parliament for 2 months. As well, I speak to AFN Regional Chief Kevin Hart about housing conditions on First Nations. Needless to say, houses there are also in dire need of repair and replacement, and the consequences of not doing so can be catastrophic. That's coming up in a matter of minutes. I'll see you then.
Looks like a great show as always, Todd. You can watch the entire interview and episode of Nation to Nation in about a minute's time. That is all the time we have for today. For more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.